Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. No one is coming to save you. I will finish you off and disappear forever, you foolish boy. Were the words of a witch who Nicholas had unknowingly fallen in love with. Nicholas, a 16-year-old teenager, was studying architecture and regional planning at Numa University in the city of Gaba. He was the second of 3 children in a middle-class family. His parents, though hardworking, often struggled to make sure their children had a better life. From a young age, Nicholas had always been a dreamer. His parents, although they didn't have much, always encouraged him to believe that he could achieve anything if he worked hard enough. His father worked long hours at a local bank, while his mother ran a small grocery store, though it sometimes barely made enough to cover the bills. Despite their financial challenges, their home was filled with love and hope. As the second child, Nicholas often felt overlooked. His older brother Michael was a natural leader who excelled in both school and sports, always getting the attention. His younger sister Angela was a child prodigy, gifted in science, and already dreaming of becoming a doctor. Nicholas, on the other hand, struggled to figure out where he fit in. He was charismatic and easy to talk to, and while he had the ability to get along with anyone, he hadn't yet found his true passion or purpose. When he enrolled in Numa University to study architecture and regional planning, Nicholas thought he had found the right direction. However, university life turned out to be more complicated than he expected. The lectures were interesting but overwhelming, and the pressure to fit in grew stronger every day. Between long hours of studying, there were constant parties and social gatherings that seemed to call out to him. Nicholas found it easy to get lost in the excitement of meeting new people and the distractions of university life. For the first time, he felt like he could let go and be himself. There were no strict expectations, and he felt truly free. His parents, who trusted him to make good decisions, had no idea how much he was getting swept up in the moment. The excitement of university life was drawing him in, and Nicholas found himself pulled away from his studies and his dreams. As the pressure to fit in took over, Nicholas quickly became well known at school, easily making friends with all kinds of people. He became really popular and seemed to be at the center of everything. One of his close friends in his department was Ben. Ben liked Nicholas as a person, but he didn't really approve of Nicholas's lifestyle on campus. Every now and then, Ben would try to give him advice, warning him about the path he was heading down, but Nicholas never really listened. He was caught up in the fun and excitement of his social life and didn't pay much attention to Ben's concerns. By the time they reached their 4th year, both Nicholas and Ben were assigned to the same construction firm for their industrial attachment. The industrial attachment was a year-long, hands-on training that was required for their graduation. The company gave Nicholas and Ben an apartment to stay in during their attachment. It was a great opportunity for them to learn and gain experience in their field. Mr. Fano, the general manager of the firm, was a man who often worked on side projects and deals outside of the company's regular work. He noticed Nicholas and Ben and took an interest in them. He decided to bring them into one of his big deals, a 10 billion Naira contract. Nicholas and Ben worked on the project, and they were both generously rewarded for their efforts. Mr. Fano paid them 5 million Naira each, not really because they deserved it, but because he took them as his sons and wanted to do something nice for them within the short time they had together, while Ben decided to play it safe and keep his money in a fixed deposit account at the bank until after graduation. Nicholas chose a different path. Instead of saving or planning for the future, he began living a very wild lifestyle. He started going to even more parties than before and had several girlfriends. Ben was really worried about Nicholas and the choices he was making, so he tried to talk to him about it. However, Nicholas didn't take it well. He felt offended by Ben constantly trying to correct him. One day, he snapped, "I'm not a child." Ben was surprised by the outburst. "I didn't mean to upset you, Nick," he said gently. "I'm just looking out for you. I care about you." But Nicholas wasn't interested in hearing any more advice. "I can take care of myself," he responded sharply, not wanting to be told what to do. After that conversation, Nicholas felt more determined than ever to live life on his own terms. He didn't want anyone, especially Ben, telling him how to live. So, Nicholas made the decision to move out of the staff quarters. He rented a one-bedroom apartment for the last 6 months of their industrial attachment, wanting to have his own space, free from any more interference. He didn't want anyone to question or judge the way he was living, not even Ben. It was at one of the loud parties that Nicholas attended, with the music blasting and the lights flashing all around, that he first saw her. Her name was Elvira, and she was like no one Nicholas had ever met before. She had a way of standing out in any crowd. Her eyes were dark and mysterious, and her long black hair flowed down her back. When she smiled, it gave Nicholas a strange feeling, like a chill running down his spine. There was something about her that felt otherworldly, but Nicholas was so captivated by her that he didn't stop to think about it. He was immediately drawn to her. They started talking, and it felt like she could see into his very soul. She understood him in a way that no one ever had before. She made him feel special, like he was the most important person in the world to her. It was the first time Nicholas felt truly valued and desired, but there was something unsettling about her, something he couldn't fully understand. Her laughter had a sharpness to it, like the sound of thunder before a storm, and when she touched him, it felt as if electricity ran through his body. It wasn't just a simple attraction. It was something much stronger, something almost dangerous. Elvira began to insert herself more and more into his life, always appearing at just the right moment. Her voice became a comforting presence in his chaotic thoughts. Nicholas found himself craving her company, wanting to be around her even when he knew something was strange about her. Over the next few weeks, Nicholas found himself becoming more and more drawn to Elvira. She was everywhere, in his thoughts, in his dreams, and at every party he attended. There was something about her that he couldn't resist. She seemed to understand him in ways no one else could. When they were together, time seemed to stop. Ben started to notice that something was off with Nicholas at work. One afternoon, as they were sitting together, Ben spoke up, his voice filled with concern. "Nico, my man, you've been different lately," he said. "You've been skipping work a lot. We only have 3 months left of our industrial attachment, and we need to be at our best so our bosses can say good things about us in our discharge letters." Ben paused, trying to make his point. "You've been spending too much time with these new friends of yours." What Ben didn't know was that one of those new friends was a woman named Elvira, who had casted a spell over his friend Nicholas. Nicholas smiled and brushed off Ben's concern. "I'm fine, Ben. Just enjoying life," he said, trying to hide the truth. But deep down, Nicholas knew Ben was right. Something was wrong. He had started losing track of time, missing work, and being absent-minded during project meetings. Elvira seemed to be always around, pulling him away from his responsibilities. She didn't demand much from him, but her presence was always there, quietly taking over his life. It was like she was a shadow lurking in the background, waiting for the perfect moment to pull him even further away from what he needed to focus on. One night, after another long evening of drinking and dancing at one of the big parties, Nicholas found himself alone with Elvira on the balcony of an apartment complex. The night air was cool and refreshing, but Elvira's gaze was intense, almost as if she could see right through him. "I want to move in with you," she said quietly. "I want us to live together." Nicholas blinked in surprise. But nothing, Nicky," she interrupted, her voice soft. "I love you. Don't you love me too?" She pretended to look sad. "Do you have another girlfriend?" she asked, looking as though she might be hurt. No, not at all, my love," Nicholas quickly replied. "Please, move in whenever you want." So, Elvira moved in with him. But as the days went by, Nicholas began to feel different. It wasn't just the tiredness from staying out late and partying every night. There was something else, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He started feeling uneasy, as if something wasn't right. It was like he was always on edge, as though someone or something was constantly watching him. When he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. It felt as though the person staring back wasn't really him. And the worst part, the nightmares. They started to haunt him every night, vivid and unsettling, making him feel trapped in a world he couldn't escape from. One night, after a particularly disturbing dream where Elvira's face turned into something monstrous, Nicholas woke up in a panic. His body was drenched in sweat, and his heart was pounding in his chest. He looked over at Elvira, who was lying beside him, fast asleep, completely unaware of the terror that had just gripped him. His mind was racing with fear, and he felt like he couldn't breathe. In an attempt to calm himself, he stumbled out of bed and made his way to the kitchen. Maybe a glass of water would help clear his head. But when he opened the fridge door, he froze in shock. On the fridge door, written in what looked like blood, was a chilling message. "No one is coming to save you, Nicholas." His whole body went cold. The words sent a wave of dread over him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening, something he couldn't understand or escape. The days that followed were a mix of confusion and fear for Nicholas. He tried to talk to Elvira about everything, but it seemed like she was always one step ahead of him. She would disappear for days, leaving him feeling paranoid and alone. Nicholas didn't know if she was messing with his mind or if something much darker was happening. He couldn't tell if he was really in love with her and just missing her, or if there was something more sinister going on. As time passed, Nicholas began to lose himself. His work started to slip, and he fell behind. His friend Ben, once close to him, began to distance himself, and Nicholas felt more isolated than ever. Ben was getting more and more concerned about his friend, Nicholas. One day, he decided to surprise him with a visit at his apartment. When Ben arrived, He was shocked to find a woman he didn't recognize in Nicholas's house. "Nick," Ben said, his voice full of worry. "You're not the same. What's going on? And who is this woman in your house?" "She's Elvira," Nicholas quickly answered. "She's my girlfriend." Ben felt disappointed. "I'm your friend," he said. "You couldn't even tell me you had a girlfriend? And aren't you too young to have a girl living with you? This isn't right, Nick." Nicholas didn't respond. He seemed distant, almost like he wasn't really there anymore. While they were talking in the living room, Elvira came in and demanded that Ben leave. She claimed that Ben was trying to ruin their relationship. She started crying, and Nicholas, looking lost, told Ben to leave. Ben was shocked. "You want me to leave your house because of a girl you barely know?" he asked, not believing what he was hearing. But Nicholas couldn't answer. He didn't know what to say. He had lost control of himself. All he knew was that Elvira had some kind of power over him, something that kept him attached to her. It wasn't love, and it wasn't desire. It was something much deeper, something that slowly took over him, piece by piece. Nicholas had an old neighbor named Mr. Bala. Mr. Bala was a historian, well known for his deep knowledge of Gaba's history and folklore. He had lived in the neighborhood for over 25 years, so he knew the area and its stories very well. Mr. Bala had been quietly watching Nicholas and his girlfriend Elvira for some time. He had his suspicions about Elvira, but he never had the chance to talk to Nicholas about it. One night, as Nicholas was taking a walk alone through the streets, lost in his thoughts, he accidentally bumped into Mr. Bala. "You look troubled, young man," Mr. Bala said with a gentle smile. "Are you okay?" "I don't know anymore," Nicholas replied, his voice heavy with worry. "Come, sit with me," Mr. Bala said. "Let me tell you a little story. Maybe it will help you." Nicholas, feeling confused and looking for answers, agreed to listen. For the next few hours, Mr. Bala shared the dark history of witches in Gaba. He spoke about women who had once lived in the town, using their beauty and charm to seduce young men. But their true intentions were far darker. These women would drain the life energy of the men, feeding on their souls to keep themselves young and powerful. As Mr. Bala spoke, Nicholas began to feel a chill in the air, as if the past was reaching out to him, warning him of something terrible. "Elvira," Bala said, his voice lowering. "She's one of them. And now she has you in her grip." Nicholas was shocked to his bones. "You mean I am under a spell?" he asked Mr. Bala. "Not completely," Bala said. "She's still working on you. If the spell was complete, you would have been dead by now." This further terrified Nicholas. "Please help me. What can I do to get rid of her? I am so scared to return home. She's waiting for me at home as we speak." At home, Elvira had just made preparations to end Nico's life that night. She would complete the rituals, kill him, and disappear forever. Mr. Bala, seeing how scared Nicholas was, quickly came up with a plan. He was a devout Christian and decided to seek help from his pastor that night. They would stay at Mr. Bala's house that night and keep watch, waiting for a signal from Nicholas to come in and send Elvira out of Nicholas' house. But little did they know, Elvira had some wicked planned for that very night. She wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way. At home, she was prepared to complete the rituals, kill him, and then disappear forever. The pastor waited at Mr. Bala's house for a signal from Nicholas, hoping he would reach out to them through an obvious sign. When Nicholas came home, Still shaken from his conversation with Mr. Bala, he intentionally left the front door unlocked so Mr. Bala and the pastor could enter if they needed to. As soon as he stepped inside, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The house felt unusually tense, and the living room was dark. To his horror, he saw Elvira sitting there in the shadows. His heart began to race, and his body was drenched in sweat. "What's going on, babe? Why is it so dark?" Nicholas asked, his voice trembling with fear. Elvira stood up slowly, but this time her face was no longer the beautiful one he had known. Instead, it had changed into something monstrous and terrifying. "Come here, my darling," she said with a chilling voice, grabbing him roughly by the collar. Nicholas was so frightened that he couldn't even scream. Elvira had taken away his ability to speak. "Your time is up, Nicholas," she sneered. "I'm going to end you today." She laughed, a terrible sound, as she began using dark powers to drain his life away. "No one can save you now. I will finish you off and disappear forever, you foolish boy." Meanwhile, Mr. Bala and the pastor were still waiting for a signal, unsure of what was happening. They didn't want to act too soon without being sure something was wrong. But as the minutes passed, they felt something had to be going on. Finally, Nicholas, unable to scream because of Elvira's spell, managed to knock over the TV, hoping the loud crash would be enough of a signal. As soon as Mr. Bala and the pastor heard the noise, they rushed to Nicholas's apartment. They barged in just in time to see Elvira's dark powers almost completely overpowering him. When Elvira saw them, she became furious. "How dare you come here?" she screamed. A fierce battle broke out between the pastor and Elvira. "I will kill all of you and disappear forever," she shouted, angry and ready to fight. The final battle was intense and terrifying. As the pastor fought Elvira, her true form was revealed. Not the beautiful woman Nicholas had fallen in love with, but a dark, twisted creature full of evil. The battle raged on for some time, but in the end, good triumphed over evil. The pastor's strength was too much for Elvira, and she vanished into thin air, gone forever, because she had never truly been human. As soon as she was gone, Nicholas regained his ability to speak. Mr. Bala helped him up from the floor, where he had been lying, and Nicholas thanked both Mr. Bala and the pastor for saving his life. Too scared to stay in his apartment, Nicholas decided to spend the night at Mr. Bala's house. The following day, he moved his belongings to the staff house, where he stayed with Ben for the remaining 5 weeks of his industrial attachment. The dark spell was broken, and Nicholas was finally free from Elvira's evil influence. However, he lost the 5 million naira he had earned from the job he and Ben had worked on. In the end, Nicholas learned an important lesson. Living recklessly and giving in to temptation can come with a high price. But if you're willing to fight for your freedom, there's always a way to escape.